Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this video I'm going to be doing a review and talking about Spirit of Steam and Sorcery, which is a freely available web supplement written by Tom Miskey. Now, Tom got in touch with me a couple of months ago regarding the RPG review I'd done of Legends of Anglaire, and Tom was partially responsible for the magic system within Legends of Anglaire, which, as I said in my review, was certainly one of the high points of the book for me. Now, Tom was kind enough to point me in the direction of the Spirits of Steam and Sorcery supplement that he'd written as a free web supplement for Spirits of the Century that was designed to allow people to run a version of the steampunk setting Castle Falkenstein as a magic system that was more close to his original idea, his original vision for a Fate magic system. And I believe it was one of the first magic systems he'd written for the more recent iteration of Fate. Now, I don't really know a lot about Castle Falkenstein beyond the fact that it's a steampunk style setting. I can't say that I'm really immersed in the steampunk genre, to be perfectly honest, and I've honestly never played Spirit of the Century, although I am familiar with it as a bit of a Fate head myself. However, I thought I'd talk a bit about the Spirits of Steam and Sorcery, since I do love all of the alternate magic systems and the different ways that people have suggested for running magic in the Fate system. And I was interested to see what Tom had done because I'd liked the Legends of Anglaire Fate system so much. Now, it became obvious upon looking at the Spirits of Steam and Sorcery supplement, which I will put a link to down below in the description of this video so that you can all have a look at it, that it was far more than simply a magic system. It's a whole mini supplement designed to allow you to play this Castle Falkensteinian version of Fate, and includes such details as the various fantasy races that you can choose, in which it uses a simple but very effective system where you have to have one of your aspects mentioning your race, and it gives you some details about what they can be invoked and compelled for based on the stereotypical character of the race in question. And if you wish to focus more in on the racial aspect of your character, then you can take additional stunts that apply to that race. Now, I think this is a very simple idea, but it's also a very neat and tidy and very interesting way of doing it, since you could just take a simple aspect and leave it at that if you wish. However, you can also take these stunts, but you're not forced to. It's an entirely optional thing. So really, if you want, all you have to do is mention in your aspects that you're a member of that race. And I think that's a great streamlined way of representing something which far more detailed systems have been suggested for, to be honest. I don't think the detailed systems in particular add a great deal more to the game. Now, I'm not familiar with Castle Falkenstein, as I've said, so I can't say how accurate a conversion this is. All I can say is that from my point of view as an outsider to that sort of game, it looks extremely promising, unlike something myself that I'd want to run. Now, I'm definitely planning on using a few of the elements out of this game, the races being one of them, if I get round to running a fantasy or a steampunk or a fantasy steampunk game. The weapons and gadget stuff that's written in there is a little bit involved for me, to be honest, a little bit crunchy. However, I can see how the focus on equipment would be more important in a steampunk game, since after all, steampunk is the genre of gadgets, the clanking metal and the hissing of steam. So I don't think that's any major flaw to the setting. I'd probably trim it down a little bit, but that's one of the great things about the system. You can just trim out elements that you don't like. The spell system is based around a skill system slash roll, with additional shifts being spent to extend the range of spells, etc. Now, if the net result of your spellcasting roll, once you've spent any additional successes to expand the range or target additional people or whatever you want to do with them is above 0, then there's a risk of the increased extra magical energy running awry and causing the spell to go wild, as it's termed in the supplement. And you have to make another roll to see whether this happens or not. If your result is a minus, then in addition to any other consequences, you have to make a roll to avoid a backlash, as almost your own energy is sucked out of you to power the spell. You've overextended yourself in a way. Although for both of these, for wild spells and backlash, you can spend some of your successes, your shifts that you've gained by passing the spellcasting roll, to offset this rather than to increase the potency of the spell itself. Wild spells tend to mean that you gain an aspect related to the spell, as the magical energy just bleeds into you and the surrounding environment. So for instance, if I was using a spell to conjure up a rainstorm, I might gain an aspect which means that there's a fog or a mist hanging around me as I walk about. If it's backlash, it tends to be more stress or damage, as almost, as I say, your own energies are sucked out as you've overextended yourself to power the spell. There's a list of actions that spellcasters can do within their magical spheres of influence, or laws as they're called within the supplement, and this is very easy to understand and lays out precisely what sort of things you can do without being too restrictive. There's still a lot of room for manoeuvre within the broad categories given, but it is nice to have that framework there. So since I found with some of the more abstract spell systems, often people who aren't used to a more free-form style of game can look at it and they seem a bit confused. They don't really know what they can actually do. They're a bit stumped by the amount of narrative freedom offered. It's like if you ask someone to do a painting and you just throw them a white sheet of paper and you say, paint me anything you want. Some people will immediately grab hold of that paper and then immediately start furiously drawing away. In the same way in this system, some people would say, great, if they had a complete free-form spell system, they would immediately start crafting their spells and their cantrips or whatever. Whereas some people will look at that piece of paper and without any sort of starting point, they'd freeze up, they'd get a bit stumped, they'd get a little confused. They wouldn't be sure where to start. And this can happen with some of the more free-form systems. However, the spirits of steam and sorcery seems to strike the exact right balance as far as I'm concerned and has the best of both worlds. It allows you this narrative freedom. However, the different magical laws, the different magical specialities offer you just the right amount of ideas as to what sort of thing you can do with your magic. They give you that starting point, that framework which sets you on the right path, and then once you're going, it's far easier to come up with the ideas for your spells and decide what you want to do. And this is followed by a handy list of sorceress orders, which I assume are sorceress orders out of the Castle Falkenstein RPG, and it details what laws you would get for being a member of one of these particular orders. Now, what sort of laws are there? Just to give you a few examples, there is the fire law, which is one of these 4 elements. The law allows the control of heat and fire. You can actually create fire with spells, igniting flammable materials or hurling balls of fire. You can create or control fire elementals, create smoke, and increase or decrease the density of fire, etc. For another example, there's the law of spirits. It allows you to converse with spirits and exact services from them. It covers both spirits of the dead and the many types of nature spirits. You can attempt to command them or summon a spirit companion. It also allows you to astrally project your own spirit. And those are just a couple of examples of the laws that are on offer. And in terms of the sorcerer's orders, we have the Illuminati, which offers access to the laws of the mind gateways, the law of reveal, and the law of cantrips. And we have the Druids, who offer the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And the League of Isis will offer the laws of shapeshifting, healing, the heart, and access to minor cantrips. and I think this is a very characterful way of handling these laws and presenting a framework for Magic. So if you're looking for a system of Magic that has a little bit of crunch to it and a little bit of a framework to set you on your way, but isn't quite as heavily rulesy as the Magic system in Legends of Anglaire or some of the other Magic systems that have been presented, you could do far worse than take a look at Spirits of Steam and Sorcery. And if you're planning on running a fantasy game or a steampunk game, or as I said, a fantasy steampunk game, and certainly if you're a big fan of the Castle Falkenstein setting, since as I said, I don't know if it's 100% conversion accurate, but it certainly seems to have captured that whole steampunk fantasy theme for me. I'd certainly suggest you give this a look. And thank you very much, Tom, for pointing this out to me and sending me the link. As I said, I'll put a link down below in the description so anyone who's interested can have a look at this, and I'd certainly recommend you give it a look. If you've enjoyed this video, please click on like and consider subscribing to the channel. Until I see you next time, thank you very much for watching, and if you have any comments about this supplement or anything in this video, please leave the comments down below or comment on the Google Plus links. Thanks very much for listening and for watching. I'll see you next time.